for about 40 or 50 years, there has been a plan afoot that I've had personal knowledge of from people who've been on the inside of the planning of these sort of events. And it's not just one person like Werner von Braun. It's a number of people who have told me this. Now, there's a colonel who has recently surfaced who actually was in on some of the early meetings with the late Jimmy Carter presidency and the early Reagan presidency, where they were presenting the idea of SDI, or Star Wars, and that's putting weapons in space. And he said that one of the things they used as a sort of a card to play was the alien threat card, and that this was specifically brought up as a way to manipulate Ronald Reagan into accepting that this was another reason why we should spend vast sums of money to put weapons up in space. So, and this is a man who's a colonel. I mean, he's not some kind of conspiracy theorist who's, out in the New Age community. So I think that you have to understand is that, these sorts of sources that we have within the Disclosure Project, which now number over 550 military and intelligence and corporate whistleblowers or witnesses who've seen these sorts of projects or have been privy to some of this information, is how we've made our assessment. And my assessment is that this is a very real problem. This is why if you read the briefing that I put together for President Obama last year, and it's at disclosureproject.org, at least some of it is up there now, we very clearly outlined the risk of this kind of a false flag operation tricking the president as well as the Pentagon into this, because most people, most people are very naive about. They think there's some vast conspiracy out there that really doesn't exist in the sense that they envision it. Most people think, well, if you're the CIA director or if you're a big admiral or general at the Pentagon, you're in on it. You're in on it, and this simply isn't the case. I mean, I sat with five-star Admiral Lord Hill Norton at his home, and he was furious that he, while being head of the Ministry of Defense in the United Kingdom and head of the Military Committee for NATO, had been shut out completely of this information. And yet he had come to learn, of course, that these things had happened, that there had been an extraterrestrial vehicle that landed in Rendlesham Forest at the Bentwaters Royal Air Force Base. And I think people are, unfortunately, have this idea that people in those sort of positions would automatically be in on this kind of intelligence. And it's because they don't understand the highly compartmentalized nature of this project to such an extent that, for example, when I briefed Clinton's first CIA director, R. James Woolsey, he was virtually in tears as he explained to me that he and the president had inquired about these issues. They knew things were going on, but they were completely denied any information and access.
So do you think we're talking about a small rogue group potentially within the government structure that are pulling the strings down? What do you think?
Yes, it is a relative. Well, it's not that small in terms of its influence, but in terms of the number of people who are read into it. I mean, read into means, in sort of military speak, briefed, and who have control over it. It's a relatively small number of people, but internationally, there's a committee of around 200 or 300 people involved. And it's not just U.S. I mean, it is international. But the problem is that it's so highly compartmentalized that even within this group, which at one time used to be called Majestic, and even up into the 1990s, I have a secret National Reconnaissance Office document that has Magi on it and Magic on it as code project names, that those operations were so compartmentalized that even within those operations, there are people who don't know, the left hand doesn't even know that part of the right hand exists. And this is the nature and the danger of extreme secrecy that John Podesta, the chief of staff for Clinton, and the man who put together the Obama administration between November 4th and January 20th of last year, John Podesta has publicly called for disclosure and ending secrecy and having more transparency. And this is a man very close to the current president. And I can tell you that recent meetings I have had in Washington would indicate that there's a tremendous amount of interest in this subject. The problem is that the people that we think have power do not. And this is a very dangerous situation for that reason. And I think this is why people have to say that, the public has to become educated about this and let their leaders know that they would like to have them do something about this problem, because they find it difficult to act in a vacuum.
Who would you say has the power to do something about this, to have influence in terms of this question of disclosure?
We do. This is why the Disclosure Project was formed. I'm not trying to be glib, but, when we did the 2001 National Press Club event, which people can see now, the entirety of it at disclosureproject.org, you'll see that eventually that was seen by about 1 billion people worldwide. We continue to release documents and information. We have a new set of documents that are up there that are some of the documents in the briefing I gave to President Obama last year. And these include have not been declassified and released officially, but I have sources within the National Reconnaissance Office and the National Security Agency and CIA who have provided me with documents, and they are legitimate documents that actually have the project code names and code numbers on them, and those are up on our website. And people have asked me, how in the hell can you legally release those things? And I explain that our group has explained that this group, as you said, is rogue and illegal, and therefore they can't cite the National Security Act of the United States or of Great Britain or any other country to hide behind. We can prove. See, one of the things that is a unique situation with the Disclosure Project is that we're one of the few groups that have actually sat with senior members of the Senate or the Minister of Defense or Secretaries of Defense or CIA directors and people of this level. And when those people assure you that they know nothing and have no access to these projects, for whom we have first-hand witnesses who are in those projects, you know that those are being run illegally because they're outside a constitutionally required oversight and control. Therefore, and this is a very important legal argument, therefore, all those projects are running rogue and illegal, and anything we get, whether it's a document, evidence, testimony, we can legally provide to the public. And that's what we did beginning in 2001. And I think that now, whether or not any official response to this is forthcoming, there's a lot of speculation. There are people, let's just say there's an old Lao Tzu saying from the Tao Te Ching, those who know do not say, and those who say do not know. But I will tell you that I am always hopeful, but I'm cautiously hopeful. My experience, having been doing this now for 18 years or so with people like the CIA director and whatnot, is that there is enormous interest in the subject in those circles. What I haven't seen is the moral courage to do anything about it, because threats have been made, people have been assassinated, people are threatened. I'm working with a very senior scientist in the largest government lab in the United States who knows about a lot of this stuff personally, and he has told me, and he's a man of enormous reputation and integrity, that both he and his wife and his children and grandchildren would all be killed if he told some of the things he has shared with me to the public. So the kind of things that have been done by this thuggish group are truly frightening. And those things have happened to me, by the way, these threats. But I'm not deterred because I'm just that kind of person. I'm an emergency doctor who's taken care of many, many people who've been killed over a 50-cent deer. I'm certainly not going to be intimidated by these kind of thugs. But I think that the problem is most people who are scientists or politicians or lawyers who work in government, if they get visited by someone in a suit from one of these agencies and says, look, and this is what happened to Jimmy Carter, by the way. We know this from firsthand testimony, that he was visited after he started making inquiries into this. And he was told, President Carter, if you'd like to complete your first term in office, you'll keep your mouth shut about this issue.
Right.
And that is not a rumor. That absolutely did happen to a president of the United States. So the question becomes, who has the moral courage to come together? Now, I will say that in Europe, where many of your listeners are located, there are some governments that I don't want to go into which ones they are that have reached out to us, their ministries of defense and their leadership, about this, both in terms of making contact with these extraterrestrial civilizations and also facilitating disclosure. And there's an enormous base of growing support for ending the secrecy. What they're concerned about is moving unilaterally without the U.S.